We found it drifting on the periphery of the Charnev Expanse, a region of contested void space that had long been deemed unworthy of colonization due to its lack of mineral richness and stellar activity. The anomaly was logged by our scout vessel, Threxal Vantage, during a routine patrol. An object of unknown origin, metallic and silent, suspended in the ether like a coffin made for gods. At first, we were intrigued. Initial scans were met with unexpected resistance, not in the form of countermeasures or cloaking, a tactic the lesser races use, but a subtle interference, as though the craft refused to be perceived. Our instruments faltered not due to jamming, but due to doubt, as if the data they received was somehow incorrect. I remember the tone of my senior analyst, Zareth Cole, when the visual feeds first returned. "It appears archaic," they noted with amused disdain. "Primitive construction, linear symmetry, crude alloys, definitely pre-quantum propulsion, possibly a derelict of some pre-stellar civilization." Their assumptions seemed logical. The vessel bore none of the elegant curvature or crystalline integration common among intergalactic powers. It was angular, brutalist, a slab of armored intent forged in the image of violence. No bioluminescence, no harmonic resonators, merely metal and mass, dead mass. We approached with standard formation, no shielding raised, no weapons primed. It did not move. It did not pulse with energy. It was the size of a regional command barge, but gave no thermal output, no gravimetric signature. It was, by all calculations, dormant. Upon closer proximity, our sensorium relays began to extract more curious anomalies. Though silent to external probes, the vessel possessed internal atmospheric cycling, controlled oxygen-nitrogen balance, temperature regulation, artificial gravity. "Life support is active," one of the technicians observed, uncertain. "But there is no life," another said. "No biosigns." Then came the first true breach in our collective certainty. A transmission. Not a broadcast, but a recording. Triggered by our presence, or perhaps by design. Waiting for anyone. It was audio only, unencrypted. A low voice, thick with linguistic aggression, resonated through our bridge. "Here stands the Dominion, unyielding, unbroken. To approach is to test your fate." The language was translated quickly by our auto-linguists, Terran Standard, a dead dialect, remnants of a forgotten world on the outer spiral arms. "Human," the database suggested, with a dismissive footnote. "Species extinct or assimilated in prior cycles." This was impossible. Humans were a myth, nomadic primitives who scattered before the stars, only to vanish amid stronger tides. A failed species, nothing more. Yet here was this vessel, silent, sleeping, still breathing air, still waiting. We launched drones for interior analysis. They met resistance not from weapons, but from the ship itself. Hull composition defied replication. The internal architecture scrambled guidance protocols. One by one, the drones failed, severed from our command, their last telemetry filled with distorted noise. And something else. An image, a fragment, a mural etched into an interior wall. It showed creatures, bipedal, pale-skinned, clad in obsidian armor, standing atop mountains of mechanical wreckage and alien corpses alike. At the bottom, a phrase burned into the alloy. "Victory is the burden of the broken." My second heart shuddered. We had misjudged this thing. This vessel was no relic. It was a warning. The phrase lingered in our minds like a pathogen. Victory is the burden of the broken. We reviewed the drone footage repeatedly, attempting to decrypt meaning from the crude artistry and its stark epigraph. Analysts speculated it was a psychological artifact, perhaps a memorial, or a battle cry encoded in cultural trauma. But the words struck deeper, bypassing logic and embedding themselves in a more primal place, even among our kind. I filed a formal report to Central Command. A Category 3 anomaly had become a Category 1 containment concern. Protocol dictated withdrawal until a sanctioned incursion team could be deployed, but we remained. None of us voiced the decision. It was as though the ship had rooted us in orbit, drawing our curiosity taut like the string of a hunting bow. Zareth Cole recommended invasive entry. Boarding. Foolish, in hindsight. We deployed a squad of auto-sentinels, cybernetic envoys designed to interface with unknown technologies. They entered through what appeared to be a hangar breach, jagged and asymmetrical, as if torn open in war. Once inside, the sentinels mapped corridors far larger than the ship's external dimensions should have allowed. Internal spatial dilation, one of our tacticians whispered. This craft violates metric cohesion. It was larger within than without. The sentinels reported back images, long, cold hallways reinforced with alloys our metallurgy could not categorize, bulkheads adorned with symbols, not merely language, but emotional signifiers encoded with rage, grief, and something akin to reverence. The walls bore scars, scorch marks, claw impacts, embedded fragments of alien weaponry. It had been attacked, repeatedly, and had survived. We traced the path toward what should have been the command bridge. That was when we found the first of them. A body. Human. Mummified by the cold vacuum of time, yet preserved through unknown means. The corpse sat in a chair, still strapped in, hands frozen around a control yoke. Its eyes had been removed, surgically, not violently, and replaced by crystalline lenses wired into the chair itself. "What is this?" Zareth Cole asked, their voice stripped of arrogance. A new scan revealed that the lenses weren't passive components. They were memory storage. These humans had wired their minds into the ship. We accessed a fragment, just one, with caution. It should not have been possible. The neural format was alien, chaotic, emotional. But there were patterns. And in the patterns, a story. We saw fire, war. Not in the stylized sense of conquest we understand, but true annihilation. Cities burned in the airless dark. Worlds torn apart by orbital bombardment, not waged for territory or survival. But vengeance. Spite. Defense turned into scorched earth purity. Human fleets fighting not to win, but to deny victory to their enemies. The recording ended in silence, the final image that of a human soldier cradling a dying comrade, whispering to him, "They broke our shields, so we became the blade." It was then we realized, these were not warriors in the traditional sense. They were remnants, survivors who chose to become the thing their enemies feared most. And we had boarded their tomb. Or their temple, or their trap. The walls vibrated. For the first time, the ship responded. It was waking up. The vibration was faint, almost imperceptible at first, an oscillation not of the hull, but of the air itself, as if the ship were not awakening in the mechanical sense, but exhaling, breathing after a long, cold sleep. Alarms blossomed across our systems. "Gravitic distortion localized around the vessel," reported my helm tactician, voice brittle. Our navigational anchors began to drift, recalibrating against a field that had not existed moments prior. The human ship, this Dominion, was generating its own gravity well, not as propulsion, not as defense, as presence. Zareth Cole issued an immediate retrieval command to the boarding sentinels, but it was too late. The connection severed mid-transmission. Static flaring, then silence. Final telemetry showed one sentinel turning on another, its limbs contorting, tearing at its own chassis as if infected by madness. Our internal psychometric arrays detected a spike among the bridge crew. Discomfort, anxiety, a collective tightness in the thorax sacs, an autonomic response we had not experienced since the Oort extinction war. I summoned a stillness protocol. "Resume logical analysis," I commanded. "Emotive contamination is compromising cognition." But even as I spoke, I felt it. A sensation, not neural, not emotional, an echo. It slithered just beneath conscious thought, a spectral residue that coiled around the mind and pulled inward. The Dominion was not transmitting. There were no signals, no psychic bursts, no viral intrusion. It was remembering. And somehow we were remembering with it. Fragments like shattered reflections in still water. A child clutching a broken doll, staring up at a descending orbital carrier. A man on fire, screaming in a void, refusing to die until he dragged his attacker with him. A woman standing over a console, hand poised above a red switch, whispering, "If they come, we end it all." None of this was our history, and yet it became ours. Zareth Cole fell to his knees. This is no warship. It is a grief engine. The phrase struck like a pulse through the bridge. We could feel it now. Every alloyed panel, every silent corridor was saturated with emotion compressed into physical memory. This ship was not built to fight. It was built to remember the fight, and make all who entered remember it too. Not as an archive, as punishment. We attempted to withdraw, engines engaged, trajectory plotted. The Dominion moved, not by thrust, not with any force we could track. It simply was. Ahead of us, then beside us, then above. It had no weapons primed. Its hull remained inert, yet its presence filled space like a devouring god. We received another message. No voice, just data. A star map. Dozens of systems. All marked in red. All extinct. Each system had one thing in common. They were the last known positions of those who had warred with humanity during the final collapse. "None survived," I murmured. "We thought the humans had been eradicated. Now we saw the truth. They had become something else, something less than civilization, and infinitely more than war." We dared not move. The Dominion hung before us in silent judgment, unblinking, unbreathing, alive in a way that violated all known parameters of life. Its hull, scarred and unpainted, bore no heraldry or designation beyond that damning title, etched across its flank like a condemnation. Dominion. My crew stared in silence, the cognitive dissonance spreading like frost across their minds. We were not an inexperienced expedition. We had documented the death throes of dying stars, interfaced with ancient machine intelligences, and once even negotiated with the psionic remnants of a race that had uploaded itself into the gravitational patterns of a black hole. And yet nothing in our databanks, nothing in our training or beliefs had prepared us for this. For them, "Send a Class 7 sterilization protocol to Central," I ordered, my own voice now hoarse with disuse. "If this vessel is replicating, we must prepare for—" "No," Zareth Cole interrupted. His voice was quiet, shaken. "We must not provoke it. We must understand it." I turned to him sharply. "We have understood enough." But had we? The Dominion responded again. Not with language, not with force, but with a door. A hangar bay on its underbelly began to open. It was not an invitation. It was a demand. We sent another probe, a simple one. No AI, no emotional processing, just cameras and mass. The hangar swallowed it whole. And within, we saw them. Thousands of armored figures, motionless, encased in black steel, each one resting in an upright pod. At first we thought them statues, symbolic placeholders for lost soldiers. But our bioscanners disagreed. They were alive, or rather, hibernating, human. They had not all died. They had hidden themselves within their own warship, becoming part of its system, its soul. Every vital sign was low, preserved in cryonic stasis so advanced that decay itself had been halted. Each chamber connected via neural latticework, alive, dreaming, collective. One organism. Many minds, each dreaming of war. Suddenly, a cascade of data streamed into our systems. Not a virus, not a command, a history, compressed, fragmented, more sensation than sequence. It fed into our archives, overloading our memory buffers, scorching through security barriers like acid through flesh. We saw the fall. Earth shattered. Not by external foes, but by internal betrayal. Civil wars layered atop alien invasions. They were attacked, yes, but they were also abandoned. Allies turned away, treaties burned, their pleas for aid met with silence. And so they turned inward and downward into themselves. They buried their dead in iron, buried their hope in fire. And when the last shield broke, they made themselves the sword. They built warships not to conquer, but to carry the last of them, to serve as arcs for wrath. These ships were not fleets, they were funerals. I saw a final image. A human woman, blind and burned, sitting on the bridge of a dying cruiser. She looked into the camera, into me, and whispered, "If the stars forget us, then we will teach them fear." The image vanished. I tasted copper in my mouth. My limbs trembled, not from the ship's power, from their will, the will to never be forgotten, the will to be feared. We had no name for the emotion consuming us. It was not awe. Awe presupposes admiration. It was not terror. Terror is chaotic, instinctual. What we felt was clarity, cold, absolute clarity. The Dominion was not a relic. It was not even a weapon. It was a statement, one so pure and resolute that it defied the entropy of time, culture, and death itself. And that statement echoed in every pulse of its structure, every breath of its sleeping crew. We will not be erased. The probe relayed new visuals. Deep within the vessel's core, past the hangars, past the ossuary barracks and armament vaults, we saw the shrine. That is what I called it, for no other term applied. At its center stood a cylindrical structure, rotating slowly, encased in gravitational shielding. Orbiting it were artifacts, shattered blades, burned helmets, blood-stained medals suspended in zero-G reverence. They weren't trophies. They were oaths. A preserved standard floated among them, a torn banner, scorched along the edges, 3 words stitched into it, frayed and faded but legible. No glory, only memory. My breath caught in my throat valves. I struggled to process the significance, but some primal corner of my cognition understood it before the rest could translate. These humans had no interest in being remembered as heroes. They only wanted to ensure the universe never forgot what made them monsters. A spike in energy readings interrupted our silence. The ship's core, once dormant, was beginning to awaken. We scrambled to interpret the signals. They weren't reactor warm-ups or weapons charging. It was a neural awakening. The humans were stirring. The cryonic chambers were still sealed, the bodies unmoving, but brainwave activity began to flare. Slow, then rhythmic, like a pulse spreading from chamber to chamber. They weren't waking individually. They were waking together. We initiated emergency withdrawal procedures. The command relays refused to respond. "We've been locked," reported my comms officer, his mandibles quivering. By what, he could not say. Our systems were uncorrupted, our engines functional. But the Dominion's gravity field had altered, subtly and irrevocably. We were now part of it. Anchored. Zareth Cole leaned forward, pupils dilated, his voice empty. "It's drawing us in, not to destroy us, to show us." The ship's internal broadcast systems flickered once more. A video file played. This time, there was no war, no carnage, just a human child in a ruined city, standing alone. Behind her, the broken hulls of enemy ships lay scattered across the skyline like fallen idols. She was bruised, barefoot, but her eyes burned, not with hope, but with a promise. The camera panned slowly toward the horizon. There stood the Dominion, rising from the ashes, silhouetted by a dying sun. The file ended with a single line of text. "We learned peace was weakness." I felt something ancient rise in me then, not fear. Reverence! For the first time in 1,000 rotations, I whispered the word I had once mocked in the mouths of lesser beings. Gods. But the Dominion was not divine. It was what came after the gods. The Dominion did not move again. It did not need to. It was motion. The stillness of it devoured the void around it, made our fleet feel brittle and temporary, like dust frozen in place before the storm's arrival. We no longer measured time in standard cycles. The clocks still ticked, yes, but no one consulted them. What was the point? We had entered a moment that defied the normal flow of existence, a moment that stretched, thick and gravitational, as if time itself hesitated to pass too near the warship. Zareth Cole had ceased issuing reports. He stood now at the observation pane, eyes fixed on the Dominion, arms limp at his sides. I knew what he was seeing, what we all had seen, but he had fallen deeper than most. Something in that ship's memory web had hooked him. Our comms systems flared again. No warnings, no hails. A simple, open-band signal broadcast across local space. Plain text. No encryption. It read, "You are not the first. You will not be the last. You are now part of the memory." We traced the signal. Pointless, really, but did it anyway. It had not originated from the ship. It had come from within our own system, internal. The Dominion wasn't broadcasting. It was infecting. No, not a virus. Not digital. Something deeper. Older. Conceptual. One of our younger officers, barely 3 cycles from his kincasting, collapsed mid-duty. His neural implants spasmed with uncontrolled memory looping. He began speaking in Terran Standard, a language he had never studied. "Collapse the moons, starve the orbitals, make them beg for mercy, and then teach them why mercy is extinction." His voice, his cadence, it wasn't his. It was theirs. We sedated him, quarantined him, but others began to falter. Quiet at first, shaky hands, unfocused eyes. Then came the dreams, shared across the neural network like wildfire. Collective hallucination, they claimed. But hallucinations don't leave behind physical coordinates. The dreams did. Coordinates to grave worlds, dead planets. We dispatched a long-range scan to the nearest, a blue-green terrestrial once colonized by the Yatari hegemony. Population, 6 billion. Now silent. Still-burning craters marked the equator like a belt of fire. A monument, if you could call it that, stood atop the highest plateau. It was a slab of metal. Human metal. One word etched into it. Remember. We pulled back the probe before it, too, was infected with the ship's psychic stain. I gathered what remained of my command staff. We locked down the bridge, ran sterilization cycles, rebooted our systems. None of it mattered. The Dominion had no weapons trained, no boarding parties, no infiltrators. And yet we were already conquered. "Sir," whispered my nav strategist, barely audible. What do we do?" I stared at the warship, the tomb, the temple, the engine of grief and iron faith. And I answered, honestly, I do not know. Because the truth had settled over us, heavy as an atmosphere. We had encountered a species that learned to bury gods, and built ships not to wage war, but to ensure no one ever dared to start one again. We did not sleep. Sleep was no longer a concept within reach. Even when eyelids fell, the mind remained awake, pacing in the dark hallways of dread the Dominion had built within us. Some tried sedation. It only worsened the dreams. Their dreams. That shared collective screaming, etched into the ship like data into black stone. My chief archivist attempted suicide. Not out of madness, out of guilt. He left a single message in his own blood before he leapt into the decompression lock. I see now why they became what they are. That was when I knew. It wasn't the warship's physical presence that held us here. It wasn't gravity. It wasn't any field or trap or trick of human technology. It was recognition. The Dominion had seen us, and once it had seen, it would not forget. We had scanned it first, studied it. We had begun this exchange not with diplomacy, but with dissection. Our hands were clean of violence, but not of intention. That was enough. To the Dominion we were already written into its memory, and once written, there was no erasing. We tried to contact Central. No response. A drone was dispatched to act as a relay buoy. It never returned. Instead, it sent a single frame of corrupted data, a visual, a fleet, dozens of vessels like ours, burned, hollow, suspended in space, drifting like charred bones on an invisible tide. They had found the Dominion before us. They had not lived to report it. Their ships floated in perfect symmetry around the human warship, not destroyed, not even looted, just arranged, as if placed in orbit like rings around a planet, a warning or a memorial, or perhaps something worse. Proof. Our vessel creaked, not from stress or damage, but as if under a pressure that did not come from mass. A psychological gravity. The Dominion was weighing us, judging us, and still we saw no weapons. Still no soldiers emerged. Still, the humans remained in their dream sarcophagus, yet we were unraveling. Zareth Cole fell next. He stood at the viewport, face pressed to the reinforced glass. I approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. His voice was calm. Dead calm. I used to think they were savage, that their culture was built on loss because they lacked the discipline to survive peace. He turned to face me, eyes glassy with salt. I was wrong. What are they built on, then? I asked him. He smiled. Refusal. The word chilled me more than any weapon ever could. A refusal so complete, so pure, that it became something unbreakable. That was the foundation of the Dominion, of all human warships, perhaps. Not survival, not vengeance, refusal to be erased. The ship broadcast one final message, not to our systems, but directly into our minds. A voice, not human, but shaped in the tones of our own speech. As if the Dominion had learned how we think, how we fear, and tailored its language to strike deeper than sound could ever reach. It said, "You are free to leave, but you will carry us." There was no threat. It was a certainty. We were no longer explorers, scientists, or commanders. We were now vessels ourselves, carriers of the story, of the Dominion. We left, At least we believed we did. Our engines fired. Our trajectory pulled free of the Dominion's physical orbit. Distance grew, by every measurable standard. The warship grew smaller in the viewing ports, until it was a blot of obsidian on a starfield already dimmed by our own failing courage. But the truth lingered, coiled beneath the relief like a second skin. We had not left. Not truly. The Dominion had permitted our departure. Not as mercy, but as design. We were not prisoners. We were messengers. I sat in the command chair, body upright by habit alone. The bridge crew operated in silence now, their movements stiff, mechanical. Every screen returned clean diagnostics. Every sensor reported safe passage. But the air on the ship had changed. It was heavier, thicker, watched. We began to see things. At first, simple distortions. Shadows where there should be none. Hallways that seemed too long. Reflections in polished surfaces that arrived a breath before we moved. Then the voices began. Always soft, always familiar. They spoke in the tones of our mothers, our mentors, our dead. Why didn't you stop it? You saw it. You knew. They were right to become what they did. I ran a neural cleanse on the internal networks. I ordered ship-wide system resets. We even vented the mid-deck just to feel in control of something. It did not help, because the Dominion was not a program, not a ghost. It was an idea, a perfect, brutal idea. And we had taken it aboard. It lived now in our logs, our minds, our language. My linguistics officer had taken to writing in human glyphs. He swore it soothed his thoughts. Another began muttering numbers in Terran tactical code. When asked what they meant, she simply answered, "Evacuation patterns, if they ever come here." The realization settled on me like planetary mass. This was the weapon, not the railguns, not the cryo-soldiers, not even the warship itself. Contagion. Humanity had found the one war they could win against all species, all civilizations, regardless of fleet size or technological edge. The war of memory. They would not need to invade. Not when every civilization they encountered would carry their legend like infection, would see them, and unravel themselves in preparation for the apocalypse they assumed must follow. Their strategy was clear. Become monsters. Make sure the stars knew. And let the stars destroy themselves in fear before ever firing a shot. I convened the bridge officers. We voted, democracy, a quaint tradition from our pre-stellar days. The results were unanimous. We would not report what we had seen. We would erase all logs. We would quarantine ourselves beyond the veiled halo, near the starless sector, until our own biological degradation took us, not to save ourselves, but to contain it. Still, I knew the truth, though none dared speak it. It was too late. The Dominion had seen us, and we had seen it. And now we belonged to the memory. We drift now. No destination, no mission. Just orbit around a dead dwarf star, hidden within the veiled halo, a region so dark and inert that even gravitational sensors whisper here, uncertain. We chose this exile, but exile is not escape. Every member of the crew carries it, the presence, like radiation, but spiritual, like gravity, but cultural. The Dominion is no longer just a ship we encountered. It is a weight in the mind, a shape behind the eyes. I see it when I blink. I hear it in silence. I dream in its language. We are still alive, but our lives ended in that system. The moment we crossed into the Dominion's shadow, we ceased to be observers and became witnesses. And witnesses carry burdens. The crew has changed. They speak less, sleep even less. Some have taken to carving human runes into the walls, the floors, their own skin. Others stand at the observation pane for hours, watching that dim, dying star, whispering as if awaiting command. I no longer intervene. What is there left to save? Yesterday, my xenopsych officer, once brilliant, logical, proud, entered my chambers and placed a small box on the table. Inside, a fragment of Terran alloy, charred, old, possibly from the Dominion itself. "We need to send it back," she said. "So they know we understand." I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. I told her to leave it. After she was gone, I opened the box again. And I wept. Not for her. Not for the crew. For us, our kind, our species. For every civilization that still lived in naive confidence, believing their enlightenment or order would shield them from what we had touched. Because the Dominion was not a glitch in the pattern. It was the pattern revealed. Humanity had not just survived annihilation. They had accepted it, had looked into the face of cosmic betrayal, seen the universe for what it was, cold, selfish, cruel, and instead of crumbling, they transformed. They became the storm that would outlive it all. I understand now why they sealed themselves in steel, entombed their warriors in machines, turned memory into monument and grief into weapon. Because the universe is not kind. And so they made themselves unkind enough to survive it. And as much as I fear what they are, I envy them. I envy their clarity, their unity, their resolve. They are no longer a species. They are a warning, a single eternal sentence carved into the black. We remember, so you will never forget. The Dominion was last seen light years away from here. And yet, sometimes I swear, when I look out the viewport, I see it again, just beyond visibility. A darker shadow among shadows, waiting, watching, not to punish us, but to ensure we carry them. Because that is how the contagion spreads. Not with fire, but with memory. We are not alone. Not in the way we once understood that word. No new ships approach, no signals breach the veil. Yet, something has begun to stir in the data. Patterns, recurrences. We thought we were clever, hiding here. A lightless system, a dead star, and no fuel trails left behind. But the Dominion had never needed sensors to track prey. It left seeds. Inside us, our memory banks are clean, verified 1,000 times over. Our logs were wiped, our systems air-gapped and sterilized. But last shift, a file appeared in the deep archive. We didn't put it there. Encrypted in Terran cipher, marked Class 14 mnemonic containment. I nearly terminated it, fearing infection. But I didn't. I opened it. There was no virus, no code, just a voice. Calm, human, male, reading a list. At first it meant nothing. Locations, vectors, proper nouns from a dozen cultures, human and alien alike. Then it struck me. They were losses. Planets, fleets, entire civilizations reduced to names in a roll call of extinction. But not a boast. An elegy, each word spoken with reverence, with sorrow, a voice not reveling in destruction, but remembering it, as if memory itself was sacred. The last word on the list chilled me beyond reason. Us. Static followed. Then silence. But the seed had taken root. Across the ship, others began to recall words, phrases, entire passages they had never heard before, reciting human history accurately. Dates, wars, doctrines, tragedies. Officers began writing in languages long dead, even by Terran standards. Ancient Greek, Sumerian, something called Latin. My comms specialist drew a battle map from memory, not ours. Human. A simulation called Stalingrad. He didn't know what the word meant. But when I said it aloud, something moved in the ship. A low hum. Sub-audible. Like a ship engine the size of a world, resonating from beneath our feet. We took the sensors offline. It didn't stop the sound. The Dominion isn't transmitting anymore. It doesn't need to. It lives in our consciousness. Each of us now a node in its memory network. We carry it without hardware. We carry it in thought. That's when I understood. The humans never expected to survive. Not physically. They knew the universe would kill them eventually, by time, war, entropy. But they didn't need immortality in body. They built a weapon that ensured their story would never die, that we would carry them forward. Every species that found them, every culture that touched the edge of their grave. Infection by reverence. Zareth Cole has stopped speaking entirely. He spends his days kneeling in the forward bay, sketching the Dominion over and over, each drawing more detailed than the last. He's never seen it from those angles. Yet they are perfect. As if drawn from inside the hull, I fear what we've become, not because we are dying, but because we are transforming. Becoming curators of a flame not ours to hold. Humanity was not the fire. They were the spark. And now, across the dark, in every hidden corner of space, new fires are starting. The transformation is no longer theoretical. It is observable. Our vessel, once a ship of science, has begun to change, not physically, not yet, but symbolically, subtly. We no longer call it by its given designation. The crew has begun referring to it as the Echo. No one remembers who said it first. The name feels correct. The bridge, once pristine and utilitarian, is littered with votive displays now, arranged not by command, but by instinct. Plates of alloy, etched with coordinates and names, lines of Terran scripture, and quotes from unknown sources. The strangest among them: "We made war, so the stars would remember we bled." We have become archivists of the human wound. It was not their firepower that broke us. It was the depth of their grief. The realization spreads through us slowly, like cold seepage into a hull fracture. The Dominion is not just a warship. It is not even a relic. It is a cathedral, a sacred vessel for the worship of loss turned into power. Each corridor is a prayer. Each cannon, a psalm. Each slumbering soldier within, a martyr sleeping until called. I do not know how many others have encountered it, but I know this: none have spoken of it publicly. The Dominion is not discussed in council meetings. It appears in no official archives. Its existence is whispered in back channels and erased just as quickly. Because those who have seen it understand what we now understand. To speak of it is to summon it. We received an unmarked transmission today. No origin, no identification, a single image, not a map, not a warning. A blueprint of a ship not unlike the Dominion. But it was not human. It was ours, designed in the architectural language of our kind, materials native to our region, engineering principles entirely our own. But the proportions, the silhouette, the weight of it bore the unmistakable signature of Dominion design. We had begun to dream of it, to build it in our thoughts, and somehow the image had manifested, projected, or perhaps extracted. My body trembled. Because this was never just a warship. This was replication. They left no emissaries, no diplomats, no biological trace. But the design? The idea? That is their virus, not to conquer, but to convert. The human species did not create a fleet to overwhelm the stars. They created a single vessel so profound, so unbearable, that those who glimpsed it would recreate it, not under duress, but from reverence, devotion. The Dominion was not a threat, it was a seed, and we are the soil. In time, we will build our own version. Not because we must, but because something inside us needs to. Because we, too, are now part of the memory. We are becoming the next link in the chain, a new voice in the choir. And when our version sails, it will carry a message of its own. There is no ceremony, no command issued, no authorization signed in blood or code, and yet it begins. Our vessel, the Echo, no longer obeys us, not in defiance, but in obedience to something higher. The construction bays, once sterile chambers for mineral studies and exoplanet probes, now hum with purpose. Fabricators have activated themselves, guided not by command protocols but by schematics none of us uploaded. We tried disabling them. They restarted. We purged the systems. They rewrote themselves. The design is not ours, but it is now. We tell ourselves it's human influence, residual psychic imprint from the Dominion, a side effect of exposure. But that is a lie we whisper to preserve our identity. The truth is far worse. We want this. We need to build it. The first forging began in silence. Sheets of obsidian alloy, not native to any known starforge, slid from the replication feed, each etched with symbols that shimmer only in the absence of light. We don't understand them. We revere them anyway. Zareth Cole, who has not spoken in 3 rotations, approached the central slab and placed his hands upon it. He wept. I asked him why. His reply was no longer in our language. It was Terran, and it was one word: remembrance. Our biologists have begun to change. Their scans show no viral infection, no parasite, but their dreams bleed into waking thought, and they speak in battle poetry now. Rhythmic chants echo through the lower decks, composed in languages they never studied. One of them built a helm, not for function, for ritual. When worn, the wearer claims to hear whispers, not hallucinations, but instructions, not from humans, from something older. The Dominion, perhaps, or what lies beyond it. A few have started calling the new ship in progress the answer. I disagree. It is not an answer. It is a mirror. We are not shaping it to defend ourselves or to attack. We are shaping it to bear witness, to carry the burden of what we now know. The universe is not beautiful. It is brutal. It tests you, grinds away your illusions, leaves you raw. And then it asks, what will you become now? The humans answered that question. Now so must we, and so the forge burns, and the steel remembers. One of our youngest officers, barely of command age, spoke words today that shook even the oldest among us. She said, "They didn't build the Dominion to destroy the galaxy. They built it so the galaxy would never destroy them again." I fear her insight. Because it is true, and because I agree. We are no longer alone in our thoughts. The Dominion watches, and it approves. The vessel grows, not just in mass, but in intention. What began as a single forged plate has become a skeletal outline, strung with coiled cables that pulse like arteries. A superstructure looms now in the lower hangar, veiled in steam and shadow, its shape unmistakably foreign, and yet deeply familiar. The Echo no longer feels like a ship. It feels like a womb. And within it, something becoming. We've ceased fighting it. There was resistance once, a flicker of preservation instinct, the remnants of a species clinging to identity. But that voice is fading, smothered beneath awe and inevitability. We dream together now, shared visions, a single image, recurring across minds, drawings, half-muttered fragments. A burning sky, a fractured world, a silhouette of metal standing untouched amid the ash. Always the same figure, colossal, human-shaped but not human, not anymore. A vessel of wrath wrapped in reverence. One of our engineers, once a man of strict reason, now little more than a vessel himself, approached me today. He held out a fragment of alloy, still warm from the replicator. "I've named it," he said, voice hollow with awe. "The Father of Silence." He wasn't referring to the metal. He meant the ship we are building. I should have reprimanded him. Instead, I nodded, because I too had begun to name it in my mind. I had begun to love it. There is a power in this process that cannot be explained through science or psyche. It is more than programming, more than mimetic contamination. This is ritual. We are not constructing a ship. We are summoning one, drawing it from ourselves. From what we now understand we could become, what they became, not by accident or desperation, but by will. The Dominion was not madness. It was purity, stripped of pretense, of morality shaped by peace and privilege. It was grief refined into resolve, pain folded into purpose. And now we walk that path. Some of the crew have begun adorning themselves with relics. Not human relics, those are long turned to dust, but replications born from our dreams. Ceremonial pauldrons, carved masks, black cloaks lined with memory thread. They do not protect. They proclaim. I caught my reflection today. I did not recognize it. Not for the armor, but for the expression. It was not fear nor wonder. It was devotion. Because I have seen the truth that others will deny, that the galaxy will fear. The humans didn't build the Dominion to defeat the darkness. They built it to become part of it. And in doing so, ensured that no species, no empire, no godless silence would ever forget their name. Now we follow, not as slaves, but as heirs, and when our vessel wakes, it too will speak, not with words, but with the memory of fire. It speaks now, not with language, not with signals, but with resonance. The ship, our ship, though that word feels increasingly false, hums with a frequency that bypasses all systems. No translator can parse it, no instrument can record it, and yet we hear it in the marrow, in the dreams, in the silence between thoughts. We do not sleep in the same chambers anymore. We congregate near the forges, near the growing frame of the newborn warship, the Father of Silence, as the name has been accepted now, etched into every bulkhead and whispered by every crew member like prayer. None remember deciding it, but all agree it was always correct. We are not alone aboard the Echo. That is no longer paranoia, it is fact. Infrared captures silhouettes we cannot track. Audio logs hold voices none recall speaking. An old lullaby, Terran, late Anthropocene, echoes down steel corridors that were never built to carry sound. Sleep, child, sleep. The stars are watching. We tried sealing the engineering deck. The doors opened on their own. Within, the central chassis is complete. 12 meters tall, inverted cruciform shape, a thorax of reinforced adamant ceramic, 2 great limbs hanging in repose, one ending in an articulated claw, the other in a plasma relay shaped like a torch. Not a weapon, a beacon. Above it, a head, if one could call it that. Smooth, eyeless, no sensory clusters, no interface, just a blank plate, engraved with a symbol none of us recognize, but all instinctively bow before. I asked our lead fabricator, once the most stoic among us, what it was. He stared at it, eyes wide, and whispered, "The witness." I wanted to challenge him, but I couldn't, because I felt it too. This ship doesn't need a crew. It doesn't need navigation. It doesn't need intent. It is intent. It is remembrance made form. We used to believe history was passive, a record, a chronicle of what had come and gone. The Dominion taught us otherwise. History is a weapon, and those who carry it, truly carry it, become vessels of judgment. That is what the humans became, not monsters, not conquerors, archivists of vengeance, not petty, not angry, not wild, deliberate. And now we do the same. We have received no new coordinates, no missions, no threats. But we know where to go. Not because we are told, because we feel it. There is a signal embedded in the dark, older than light, older than sound. A call. We are not the only ones who answered. Across the edges of known space, others are awakening. Ships not built by humans, but in their image. Different silhouettes, different languages, but the same soul. We are not building warships. We are building testaments. The stars will not remember the petty empires or forgotten treaties. They will remember the vessels that rose from ash and refused to break. The silence breaks, not with sound, but with presence. As the Father of Silence awakens, we feel the shift, not in space, but within ourselves. The final panel locks into place with a hiss of thermal release. The hull shudders once, like lungs drawing a first breath. And then, we are no longer alone, not aboard the ship, not in the void. Across the systems, far-flung and forsaken, others answer. Vessels that do not bear the human signature in material or language, but share the same impossible silhouette. A unity of design born not from shared culture, but from shared revelation. They rise. Vessels forged in mimicry, yes, but more than that. In devotion. I see them through our long-range quantum lattice, flickering like spectral titans across the black. An insectoid carrier from the Loricon worlds, carved in spined obsidian. A crystalline dread form from the Kaelari spiral, shimmering like frozen sorrow. Even a necro-shell warframe from the Hollow Moon Collective. Long thought extinct, now reanimated, singing hymns in death harmonics. Each of them bears the mark. Not a human mark, but a shared one. The symbol. The one etched into our vessel's helm plate. The witness. We did not invent it. We discovered it. Or perhaps it was waiting for us all along. Our science officer calls it a mimetic convergence field, a cosmic inevitability, a final shape toward which all grief flows. His voice is brittle when he speaks now, like every word costs him pieces of himself. Because he knows what we all know, we have become part of something far greater than we ever feared. Something deliberate. This was never about the Dominion alone. That warship, humankind's final testament, was merely the first verse, a prototype of divinity forged in rage and resolve. The humans did not want worship. They wanted continuation, and they achieved it, not by cloning their kind, but by seeding their trauma into the galaxy like pollen on a storm wind. Each species that touched that memory, that legacy, began to reshape themselves. Not by coercion, by compulsion. Because in the end, what species does not understand loss? What mind, seeing the shape of the Dominion, does not recognize itself? The galaxy now bears witness, and it answers not with apology, not with fear, but with transformation. The choir of steel is assembling. We are its newest voice. The Father of Silence is complete. It hovers in the docking cradle, silent, patient, awaiting only one thing: a destination, and we all know where it must go: to the galactic core, to the last remnants of the war that began this cascade, to the place where humanity's final message was carved into the bones of a world and left to echo for millennia. We go not to destroy, but to remember. And in our remembrance, we will reignite what the galaxy tried to bury: a fire not of conquest, but of unbreakable will. The core approaches, not the physical one. The coordinates lie buried in the galactic axis, choked by debris fields, supernova remnants, and dead satellites. But the true one, the origin. Here, above the world once called Theron 5, humanity made its stand. Records vary. Most say the Dominion arrived alone. No fleet, no reinforcements, just a single warship, blacker than void, its engines quiet, its guns cold. It did not broadcast warnings. It did not negotiate. It remembered. And what followed cannot be fully translated into data or language. The gravity wells collapsed. The defense arrays turned inward. Time itself fractured in the impact zone, leaving echoes of screams woven into the magnetic field. This planet is now a tomb. But it was once a cathedral of resistance. We descend slowly. The Father of Silence, wreathed in dark plasma, casts no shadow, only a reflection of what we've become. Our hull now gleams with foreign runes, not human, not ours. Something between. A new dialect of memory. The choir has gathered here. 31 vessels from 31 species, each one shaped differently, yet unmistakably part of the same lineage. Once, we might have destroyed each other on sight. Now, we orbit together in reverent stillness. None speak. There is no need. The Dominion is here, still, its carcass resting at the heart of the dead zone. Not intact, not preserved, but entombed. Not broken, laid to rest. And as our sensors sweep over it, we feel the pull. Not gravity, not magnetism. Legacy. Its frame is open now like a peeled husk, its interior visible, a rib cage of steel and scorched symbols. No corpses remain, no AI signatures. But there is still one light, deep in its ruined command core. A heartbeat, we do not dare approach it. Instead, one by one, the choir begins to sing. Not with sound, with memory. Each vessel projects its journey, the pain that birthed it, the grief it carries, the transformation it chose. And together, it forms a symphony of survival. Not submission, not vengeance, but a single message spoken in 1,000 tongues. We remember you. Not in blind reverence, but in fire. In steel, in the unbreakable will to endure, the Father of Silence opens its core. And from within it, we release our own message, one not crafted by committee or empire, but formed in dreams and suffering. We will not forget what the stars tried to erase. The Dominion hears. Its final light pulses once, and then it dissolves. Not destroyed, not detonated. It ascends, becomes concept, pure and eternal shed of mass. The wreckage fades into ash, into data, into design. And we understand the Dominion was never meant to last. It was meant to ignite a new age, a new kind of warship. Not vessels of death, but vessels of memory, of wrath earned and grief consecrated. We leave the orbit of Theron 5 as the choir disperses. Each ship returns to its quadrant, bearing the symbol, the song, and the seed. We are no longer the species we were. We are no longer separate. We are witnesses, and should darkness rise again, it will not find a fractured galaxy. It will find a legion of remembering flame. And in our silence, it will hear the voice of the Dominion. Forever.